Hey everyone, it's Miss Witten here to talk to you a little bit about fractions, how we identify them, how we talk about them, and just kind of what they look like in general. So a big thing with fractions is how they're written, right? Fractions are always written in a certain way. And so we always have a numerator and a denominator when we are working with fractions. Now, the numerator will be on the top, denominator will be on the bottom, but what does that mean? So denominator is the whole thing, right? It's all the parts of the thing together. The numerator are the parts that it's asking about. So you kind of have part over whole when you have numerator and denominator. Denominator I like to think of because it's big, it's a denominator, and the numerator is just a smaller number. So your denominator for third grade is always going to be bigger than your numerator. If not, you get into mixed fractions, which you will learn later. But the denominator is the whole thing. It's all the parts together, and the numerator are the parts of what they're asking for, which make a lot more sense when we do some examples in a second. Numerator always is on top of a fraction bar, denominator is always on the bottom, so you can see fractions written like this, or sometimes they'll have a little slash for the fraction bar, but numerator on top, denominator on bottom, with the fraction bar in the middle is how you know you're talking about a fraction. So some other vocab that's really helpful when you're dealing with fractions is sometimes you'll hear people say it's broken into halves, fourths, fifths, sixths, sevenths, eighths, ninths, tenths, 11ths. You can go on and on as big as you want. But all that means is, so halves are going to look like 1/2. Fourths mean it's broken up into 1/4. Fifths are broken up into 5. Sixths are broken up into 6. Sevenths, I'm sure you can guess by now, are going to be broken up into 7 parts, eighths broken up into 8 parts, and tenths broken up into 10 parts. So what this means is if something is broken up into fourths, it means that the denominator is 4, and if we had something like this, broken up into 4 equal parts, that's broken up to fourths. And if I shaded in one little chunk, or if I just took one little chunk, if this was a candy bar, then that would be 1/4, but my whole candy bar is broken up into fourths. So let's get into some examples. So here I obviously just have a blank circle. Whenever I see circles in fraction world, I like to think of them as pizza because it's a lot easier, and I mean, who doesn't love pizza? So before we get started, I do want to mention that it is super important when you have fractions that your shape is broken up into equal parts. When you're dealing with fractions, they must be broken into equal parts in order to be a fraction. Because if I break this up like this, into nice equal parts, and you were sharing this pizza with your friends, you would say, okay, everyone would be getting an equal piece, right? If you broke it up, sliced it up, and passed it out. But if I broke it up like this into non-equal parts, you would probably be pretty mad if you got this piece of pizza, or maybe even this pizza, but you'd probably be pretty happy if you got that one, right? But either way, you could not make a fraction out of this. They must be equal parts. So let's go back into slicing our shape or our pizza into 4 sections. So without even having to shade any of this in or doing anything, you can recognize that the denominator is going to be 4 because there are 1, 2, 3, 4 parts to the whole. So there are 4 parts total that makes up the whole. So my denominator is going to be 4. Now, if I had 2 pieces of pizza, so I'm going to shade those out as if I ate them, then my numerator is going to be 2. So this fraction is 2/4. So remember, 2 is my numerator. It's the number that is shaded. It's the number that the question is asking about. Denominator is that there are 4 sections total. So let's do another one. Let's say I need to cut my pizza a little smaller because there's more people. Okay, so I have my equal parts. No, it's not perfect, but just pretend. So without even shading anything in, what is my denominator? How many slices do I have to start? Okay, so I have 8 slices total. Total, there are 8 pieces, 8 parts to the whole, so that's my denominator. Got to add my fraction bar. So let's say that let's say I had someone took this piece of pizza, someone took this piece of pizza, someone took this piece of pizza. So even though they're not next to each other, and I said what is the fraction of shaded parts in this circle? The numerator would now be 3, right? Because I've eaten or shaded in, whatever you like to think of it, I've eaten 3 pieces of pizza out of the 8. So I have 3/8. And that's again where our fun vocab comes in. So we'll do one more on our circle. Now this one, you'd probably be pretty happy if someone gave you a piece of pizza cut like this, right? You would be getting really big slices. So my denominator, how many parts are there to the whole? There are 1, 2, right? There are 2 total slices of pizza. Now, if I took my half, now 1 part is shaded, so my numerator, the part, out of 2, the whole. So this would be called 1/2. Now, if someone came along and ate the other part, you could have 2 halves, which equals a whole. So another way we can work with fractions is, of course, with other shapes, but also thinking about other foods. So this could be, let's say, a candy bar. So the candy bar, let's break it up into some pieces, or like candy bars usually come broken up for us. All right, so these are equal pieces. So when we're dealing with this candy bar, we can first recognize our denominator. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 equal pieces. So there are 8 options, there are 8 candy bar pieces, however you like to think of it, but the denominator is going to be 8. It's how many parts there are to the whole. So let's say I shade in a few here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the 8 pieces that are shaded in. So if this question asks how many pieces, what is the fraction of the shaded portion of this shape? Your answer would be 4/8. On the other hand, they could also say, what is the fraction of the non-shaded portion of the shape? And so you have to say, okay, not shaded, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces not shaded. So my numerator is going to be 4 because that's what they're asking about. And then there are still 8 pieces total. So your fraction is going to be 4/8. So that's one way to break up our candy bar, right? We can also break it right down the middle, just like our pizza, and then our numerator would be 2, and if we shaded in one part, our numerator would be 1, getting us 1/2. We could also break this shape into 2 like this, so then there are 2 parts, right? 1, 2, 2 parts, so that's our denominator, and again, if I shaded in one of them, I would have 1/2. If I shaded in both of them, I would have 2 halves. There are lots of ways we can break this shape up. We can even break it up into tiny little pieces like this, right? They might be harder to get even, but we can also break them into that many pieces. We can keep going. As long as they're equal parts, then we can make a fraction out of them. So, what fraction of triangles are blue? This is another way that they're going to ask you questions about fractions and want you to answer with a fraction. So we have to say, okay, what are they talking about here? What are they asking? Because this triangle is not broken up into pieces like we've seen, right? It's not broken up like that or in equal parts, however it would be. It's not. It's actually asking us about the triangles. So we have to say there are 1, 2, 3 whole triangles, right? So my denominator, my bottom number would be 3. And then how many of them are blue? There would be just 1, right? So sometimes they're going to give you objects or shapes and you have to decide the fraction that they are asking about. So remember, numerator is what they're asking about, whether it's a color, whether it's a number. Then the denominator is how many there are total. So on the other hand, What if I said, what fraction of triangles are not blue? So you'd say, okay, there are still 3 triangles. That has not changed. No matter the color, they're still triangles. So how many are not blue? Well, this one's obviously blue, so that leaves us 1, 2 that aren't blue. So your fraction is going to be 2/3. All right, sometimes they'll also ask you questions like this. And this, I remember from class, would trick a lot of people. So it would say, what fraction of lightning bolts are on the right side of the line? Well, we are being asked about lightning bolts. So we have to ask ourselves, how many lightning bolts are there total in whole, right? So we have to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there are 10 lightning bolts total. Now, they asked me about which ones are on the right side. Remember, left is over here, right is over here, just as a refresher. And we can count. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 lightning bolts on the right side. A common mistake I would see people make is they would say, well, there's 4 on this side and there's 6 on this side, so it has to be 4/6. But no, because they're asking you what fraction of lightning bolts are on the right side. So this was a super quick review of fractions, naming them, looking at them, identifying them. If you have any questions for your teachers, please contact us during our office hours. We will also be posting more videos about fractions, how to compare them, how to do equivalent fractions, how to use fractions on a number line. So stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed to our page and that you are watching our videos.
I couldn't hear what you said.
And happy learning.